Yep, you can share your thoughts about the topics, the hosts, and the special guests. You can also leave a suggestion. Then, when you're done, rate the show. The hosts love your feedback, and others appreciate it. So next time you download a show, take a second to leave your thoughts and rate it.
The views expressed on contacttalkradio.com are those of the guest hosts and callers, and not necessarily of this station, its management, or other advertisers.
Welcome to the Bad Girl's Guide to Living Well with Heather Dowen, NMD. Spend time with Dr. Heather and her guests for tales of love, adventure, and how to be healthy and happy. Now, here's your host, Dr. Heather Dowen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bad Girl's Guide to Living Well. This is a companion podcast for naturopathicmd.com, where you can get wellness consultations and plans based on functional medicine anywhere, almost in the world, actually, at this point. But today is a little bit of it's a very, I don't know if I want to say special day. I have been thinking a lot about, so February 7th, 2020 is the 21st anniversary of a car accident that changed the trajectory of my life. And so being 42, half of my life, I've had this story about, my health and how I got where I am. And I probably shouldn't have worn mascara today, but I think it's important to tell this story because I've been studying a lot recently in the bent of me having a little mini midlife crisis where I'm trying to figure out where this next section of my life is going to go, right? So I guess I had 21 years pre-accident, 21 years post-accident, and now I don't necessarily have to be defined by that any longer. And I want to change the story. But I think that there's a lot of power in the story that I have at the same time, because it really did define me and my life in a lot of ways. And this story has been used in sanitized ways to explain when people say, well, how did you get into, naturopathic medicine, or why do you do integrative medicine, or selling programs about like what health thing I've overcome, so that there's a little bit of a camaraderie and a connection with that. And so I told this story a lot, but I haven't told it in this way. And I think that there's going to be a really therapeutic aspect to this for myself in not only moving past that story, but also I never want to have to tell this again, because I want to be more than just a story, than just more than this thing that happened. And I asked my little brother to be on here with me because he has a similar experience, but he's down at, I guess, Fort Benning. If I were down in Fort Benning, I'd be picking up Marines, but I don't exactly think that that's what he's doing. But unfortunately, he can't be here to tell his story about when you look at either your mortality or something that's going on in your life, and you decide, is this going to own me? Is this going to write my story, or am I going to write my story? And in some ways, I think that the event that, happened to me my senior year in college wrote my story for me in some ways. I'm going to write it now. And so if anybody ever asks me again about how I got into alternative medicine, or why it looks like I have a scar on my leg that looks like I got a gator wrestling or a nom, I just refer them to this podcast so they can listen to it. And it's a bad girl's guide because I think we all come up against something with our health and our mortality. And for me, it happened very young. And for some people, it doesn't happen until they get cancer or they get a heart attack or they, start to see their, you know, personality changes or depression or anxiety or fibromyalgia or autoimmune diseases, whatever it is. I believe that the body is telling us a message. And if you shift and you change and you write your own story, you aren't necessarily a victim, which is possibly an alternative title for this, because how not to be a victim to life's circumstances. And anyway, in my midlife crisis of figuring out where I'm going here at the age of 42, I've been listening to a lot of authors like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden and Wayne Dyer is my freaking favorite. But all of that is about how the brain is such a powerful aspect of reality, period. Like, it dictates your reality. And that's why you can say that, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. Well, I feel like I'm living proof of that, and I'm taking it to the next step as far as I'm going to let this story go and create a new one. Joe Dispenza talks about, the neurons that fire together become more and more entrained together, so that if you are used to having an emotion, you almost become addicted to that emotion, and breaking that pattern can be very difficult, but it's something necessary if you want to change your life. And so my being defined by this, or my, modus operandi of telling this story, is something that I want to be done with. And on the 21st, like, this accident is old enough to drink. And so I think it's time to let it go and think about how to retrain my neurons in a way that, even though I'm actually can say that I'm grateful that this happened to me, the things that happened since then, I wouldn't be the person that I am. Hey, there's mischief. I would be the person that I am without this experience. And I don't know what it says about me that I have to almost die in order to really, maybe I'm stubborn, maybe I'm oblivious. But it's happened a couple of times. And so, maybe it is truly the shamanic pathway where you have to almost die to tear the veil and have your hero journey. Or maybe I'm just a little bit dense and I don't necessarily listen to my intuition the first time. Anyway, this is how I got to where I am today. And I want to let it go to get to where I'm going in the next stage of my life. I didn't sleep well last night, and I do have PMS, so I completely expect to cry during this. Just, that should be a disclaimer. Plus, I think there's a lot of stuff that I suppressed, where I was just so happy to be alive that a lot of this has been suppressed in some ways and hasn't been able to come out. And so I'm going to emotionally vomit all over the interweb and be free of it. It's kind of akin to me writing down, all of the problems I have, tearing it up, lighting it on fire, and flushing it down the toilet, maybe. It's a special ceremony, and this is another one. So let's go back to 1998, fall of 1998. I was in my senior year at Cornell. I was studying neurobiology and sociology because I wanted to get both the nature and the nurture of human consciousness to understand, just funny, right? Like how we see the universe, how our personalities are formed, where our consciousness lies. And I had actually, because no one was really going to be hiring for that, but it was a pre-med major. And I didn't want to be pre-med or go into medicine because most of the people that I had met in my major were so awful. And they weren't necessarily going into it because they wanted to save people. It was because mommy and daddy thought it might be a really good occupational path for them because doctors make a lot of money. And so I was more than a little disillusioned because I definitely was an idealist and probably still am. And yeah, I'm definitely still an idealist. So I didn't want to go into medicine. Plus, I didn't really believe in how it was being practiced in a lot of ways. And I was studying in the biotechnology section of Cornell and writing research papers for a doctor there about how indigenous peoples used plant medicines in the rainforest. And it was something I was really inspired about. Like, how do we find these alkaloids and these plant compounds that can help the human body heal things, especially with cancers? And I think it's funny because I was on the path to go and, do pharmaceutical research, albeit in the rainforest. But now I find it kind of funny that I could have done that, and life was like, no, or whatever you want to conceive of as life. Now, the tough part about this conversation that I really haven't ever talked about, and why I've been having anxiety about this all morning, as far as, being vulnerable and being honest and being truthful about this, is I fell in love for the first time that fall with a man named Alex. And he was an engineer, and he was, golden boy Californian, and he was handsome, and he was sweet, and I was just head over heels excited about, I had this opportunity where I was going to be doing what I wanted to do, and I was, newly in love, and, we were talking about marriage and me moving to California with him, and like everything looked bright and beautiful, right? And so in early February of 1999, I don't know if you know where Cornell is, but Ithaca is cold, and while it's gorgeous, right? It's hilly. And I lived almost down at the bottom of the hill. So I had to walk up these crazy hills to get to class. And the biology quad is way up there, almost to the vet school. But my feet were killing me, and I couldn't walk to class. And it was just like the bottom of my feet hurting so much. And so I ended up going to see a doctor in Cortland, New York. And the funny story is I was an athlete all through high school, and a runner, and soccer, and basketball and skiing. And I was probably the most accident-prone athlete that had ever been seen. And I actually wasn't able to run at Cornell because my connective tissue didn't stand up to the cold and the running and the training. And so previous to being there, I had had my knees worked on. I'd had shoulder surgery. I'd been, taken care of from ankles and all kinds of injuries through sports by Dr. Jack Sproul out of upstate New York. Well, by the time I was a senior in college, he had actually relocated to Cortland. So I went to see him. He diagnosed me with tendonitis in both of my feet and told me to go get new sneakers. I was like, okay, so that's easy, right? So I went to Ithaca Mall, which, 21 years ago was basically empty. And everything was so ridiculously ugly that I decided that I wanted to go into Syracuse, to the larger mall, and have some better options, because I, once a fashionista, stupid running shoes, right? So Alex and I, he decided that he was going to drive me, and he drove a California car. It was a white Mazda 929 with rear wheel drive, bald California tires, and no weight in the trunk. And so we drove into Syracuse. We went through all of the stores possible and ended up getting the same pair of ugly shoes that we had found in Ithaca. Now, before we were going to get in the car and drive back, he didn't feel well, and so he wanted me to drive. And so while we were coming from Syracuse to Ithaca, which is probably about an hour-ish drive, we'd gotten off of Route 81 and we're driving from Cortland into the Ithaca section. And he was sleeping in the seat next to me and had the seat back and really wasn't feeling well. And it was maybe twilight-ish, and it wasn't really snowing at all. And I was not speeding, just driving normally down the street. And all of a sudden, he sat up, put his seat up, put his seatbelt on. And I remember the Rolling Stones song, like I think it's called Shattered, like Should Do Be Shattered, was on the radio. And probably 15 seconds after he sat up, put his seat where it was supposed to be, and put his seatbelt on, I lost control of the car on black ice and went into oncoming traffic and hit a Ford Ranger, I think. So it was like 55 miles per hour one way and the other. So it was a significant speed. We did not have airbags. And this was February. I don't really remember much of it, except I remember trying to hold myself off of the steering wheel and looking down and seeing my left leg, my jeans were just ripped to pieces, and there was a lot of blood. And looking over, the whole dash was on Alex. And I've had a lot of anger, maybe, about, it was my fault because I was driving, and, like, why weren't guardian angels watching out for us? But really, like, I think that if I had been in that, if I had been in the passenger seat and the same thing had happened, he was so much larger than me and stronger. Like, I don't know if I would have survived that impact if the same thing had happened. Not that if you like replace one variable, chaos ensues, so you never know. But about 3 inches of my tibia were just annihilated, smashed. Don't know what had hit it in the car, but obviously something smashed it. I had a couple little cuts in my hands, but no other serious wounds. When like an impact like that could have certainly just killed us. I don't remember much about it, except I remember them using the jaws of life to get us out. I remember them not expecting to find anybody alive in the car. I remember being really, really cold and like holding the back of my left leg behind like the femur behind my knee, just like trying to hold it up because the tibia isn't, or the fibula isn't weight bearing. And so there was nothing that was like holding my leg. I couldn't just rest it. And I don't have any pictures of the car. I remember one was taken when my brothers and my dad went to go see it in the impound lot. And it was a white car. And I think that they probably destroyed the pictures because it was basically painted red from all of the blood. And so I never really saw it. But when I remember coming to in the MRI or the CAT scan, I don't know which, it was just white, when they were seeing if I had internal injuries or brain damage. And I remember that's just looking up and being like, maybe I'm dead. This is the white light that they're talking about. And then I was like, ouch, no, I guess I'm not dead. And at that moment, I just felt such relief that I'd had another chance at doing something that I really loved with life and having fun. Like Cornell was not fun for me. I spent most of my time depressed, disillusioned, and nullifying myself with booze and recreational drugs and other fun things. But I guess something awakened in me that I'm wasting my time and I'm wasting my life. And now that I have another chance, I'm going to grab it. And the doctor, when I got back out before they were prepping me for surgery, because they had to put an external fixator, which I don't know if you know what that is, but they basically took 4 6-ish-inch long titanium screws and screwed them into my bone, 2 above and 2 below the break, and left a mishmash of bone fragments in there to see if it grew back together, because there was nothing to cast. There was nothing to pin. It was just smushed and shattered. And so I was waiting before surgery. The doctor on call was Dr. Jack Sproul, who had been the other person to do surgery on me, like 50 miles away, 50 miles and, 6 years separating. And I'd always loved him. And I just felt what a coincidence that he's the doctor. And he just walked in, he's like, what have you done to yourself? Like, I was getting sneakers. Whoops. And they were ugly. So it's funny that day, my brother Garrett had just been accepted to Brown to play football. And he'd gotten this great, athletic package to go. And he was all excited. And as they were driving home, well, I guess they got because this was really pre-cell phones everywhere, right? Like, they had gotten the call and left on the answering machine that I'd been in a car accident. So they were like so excited that Garrett's going to go to Brown. And then they get home. It's like, your daughter's in the hospital. She's in surgery. So my father had to drive down after driving from Providence. And I was in surgery already when he got there. But he sat next to Alex because Alex's parents were from California. So they had to figure out a flight to get there. And I don't remember exactly how many days it took. Because the dash had collapsed on him, he his femur was snapped in half, and he had his collarbone had been snapped. And so they're obviously very painful, whiplash. I mean, it was a serious, I can't believe he lived. But the difference, and I mean absolutely no disrespect for Alex, I hold him with nothing but love. We went through terrible trauma together, ended up tearing us apart because we reacted to it so differently. And I think that when you're young, what are you going to do? You're young, you're in shock. He was more worried about his GPA while we were in the hospital than, what was going to, which is fair. Cornell, it sucks, right? Like, engineers eat you alive. But it was a very different way that we looked at it. And it translated through everything. After, we were in the hospital for 2 weeks, and we got to share a room together, which is another reason why my doctor was so phenomenal and awesome. And so we went through this process that no one else understands. And there's so much hurt from it that I feel sad that we can't commiserate about it now, because I think the tough part of the story is we were ripped apart. And while you can see people and how they react to stress, it's better to see it early, I think. But it's also hard to see it early, because then, something that is so bright and so beautiful and so young just kind of gets taken out at the knees, rather than a slow decline and time to, acclimate in other ways. And that stress of the experience, we haven't spoken in years, because he really felt, last I spoke to him about it, like everything had just been ripped away. And honestly, I feel the same way. But what is it about, when life gives you lemons? I had to change the way that I saw life. And life gives you lemons, make lemonade, or lemon bars. So after 2 weeks in the hospital, I was bedridden for another 2.5 months. I was home in a hospital bed. I had to transfer, from the bed to the wheelchair to the couch every day. And I was in pain, and I was home with 2 high school age brothers that were like, "The hell are you doing home?" I had 2 surgeries. And after my second surgery, I don't remember much from the hospital, because I was so high on drugs, for pain management, obviously. But I remember coming out of my second surgery, and all I wanted to do was see my mother. It's all I wanted. And she came in, and she said that I was all wrapped up in like the blankets and everything. And she said that I just looked like this swollen little potato, and she just couldn't even take it. And she shut down. And I think I have too. And I don't blame her. But it was a very lonely thing, and I think I'm going to take a break so I can get myself together. And so listen to the message from our sponsors while I drink a little bit of liquid courage. This is really just tea.
Do you remember the last time you felt healthy and energetic? What would you do if you could regain your health and feel good again? Enjoy spending time with your family? Take a trip. Get back to being active and doing the things that you love. Naturopathic MD can help because we practice natural, functional, logical medicine. Have you ever cut yourself and taken a prescription to stop the bleeding, but the cut stayed open? No, because your body can heal itself. Cuts are usually easy to heal, but chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and digestive problems need the expert support we can provide. Are you ready to take action and get your life back? Sign up for one of our elite concierge programs today.
Are you tired of taking massive rips off your water bong and almost hacking up a lung? Dr. Wilde has developed an all-natural antioxidant water pipe additive designed to smooth smoke and add titillating flavor. Add 30 to 90 drops of our 100% natural, antioxidant-rich, essential oil-powered pipe potions to the water in your bong and smoke smarter. We have 6 sexy flavors to choose from. Some are soft and sweet, and others are powerfully pungent. We like to think of them as flavors with benefits. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram to learn more about our pipe girls.
All right, everyone, we're back for the Bad Girls Guide to Living Well. I've pulled myself together, and on with the next section of the story, I guess. So at this point, I'm bedridden at home. My mother emotionally is completely not able to deal with the fact that I have been so damaged. And my father and I have always had a very complicated relationship. He's not really a caretaker. So my grandmother, who, funny enough, always wanted to be a nurse, was able to nurse me. Now you have to remember, or I guess I should share at this point, when I was hurt, the doctors didn't expect me to even keep my leg. They didn't know how long the road was going to be, like how many bone grafts, how many surgeries, how long it would take for me to even get the bone back. They didn't know if I would ever walk again, and they were pretty sure that I would never like run, or backpack, or ski, or have full use of it ever again. My posterior cruciate ligament was also almost completely torn, and from all of the damage from the impact. And so you have to think, like, a lot of the damage wasn't just my tibia or my shin bone. Like, there's whiplash, there's back, pain. My pelvis was really altered as well from the trajectory and the force. And so I had some really negative projections made about how I was going to heal, or, they didn't expect me to graduate on time. I couldn't go to school. Luckily, I had really understanding professors. It was my last semester at school. Most of the stuff had been, most of my prereqs had been done, but I did have like a minor, concentration in addition to the biology degree. And so I was still like in need of being able to do work. And the picture that's assigned to this event that we had on Facebook was from graduating in a wheelchair on time. And they tricked out my friends had tricked out my wheelchair with like red ribbons, and it was a big deal because I still had this contraption in my leg, and I only went to a couple of classes, and yeah, I was still in pain, having pain management. So my grandmother, and how I really got on this path, fed me smoothies, high protein smoothies with almonds crushed up in them, because almonds are really high in calcium. That's why like almond milk has so much more calcium than regular milk. And if you think about it, like the surgeon saved my leg. God, they saved my life. Otherwise I would have bled out. Like that conventional care made it so that my legs are basically to the millimeter the same length. I don't have any pins or anything. And yet there was nothing about optimizing after. There was nothing about taking more calcium so that your bone grows better. I didn't even get physical therapy at that point. I think that they were just so concentrating on keeping the leg that everything else just kind of went by the wayside. And so my grandmother was absolutely such a gift, and it brought us so close because of that time, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But I was getting pressure. I remember being on the couch, and I had Alex on one side and my mother on the other, and they were like, because Alex was going to California, like he was going to go work for HP or somewhere in Silicon Valley. And, what was I going to do? Like, I'm bedridden. I still can't even go to the bathroom by myself. And they were both like, what are you going to do? What are your plans? Where are you going? Have you sent out your resume on Monster? Like, I don't even know if I'm going to graduate, right? And I remember during this time, I got a call from a woman that I had worked with previously. Her name was Dr. Teresa Brennan, and I worked for her at Cornell as a research assistant. And she called me up. She's like, Heather Pet, I have this, great big budget at Florida Atlantic University, and I need an assistant. Would you like to come and work for me? And I said, yes. And everybody was so mad because I wasn't going that path that was expected of me. And I think that's one of the big cruxes of this whole story is I could have gone and like married an engineer and never had really had to work. At one point when I was looking at naturopathic schools, even years later, he was like, come live with me. I'll take care of you. I'll pay for your school. And I needed to go and do it myself. And plus, like, that wouldn't have been fair to him either. And because my emotions and I had changed, I had grown, I had shifted. And I don't think that he really got past that trauma, even at that time, which was, 3 or 4 years later. And so I went and I worked for this phenomenal female psychoanalyst, philosopher, economist, educated out of Cambridge. And I traveled through the cradle of Western civilization with her. We went through Greece and Italy, and she's the person I went to Egypt with for the first time. She taught me how to cast astrological charts and tell tarot card readings and the importance of meditation. And we spent time meditating in the sea. And while I didn't have conventional physical therapy, I ran on the beach and I walked on the beach and I swam in the South Florida Sea, which is so beautiful. And I regained my confidence in going from being someone who was so broken. And I was a runner, like my pride, like I had great legs. I had a client, an longtime friend of mine now, longtime client. The first time I wore a skirt around him, he was like, "Oh, you have one really nice leg and one, ugh, like what the hell happened?" Because I have a significant scar. I have two awesome legs, but I really got hit in the pride as well, which is an interesting view of it. And so I had to learn to walk again. I ended up, really having to exert my independence too, because nobody thought that I could, and I needed help for a while to get around, but I just picked up and I went to Florida, and I started this, job that came out of left field, and no one ever expected me to do it alone without, Alex to support me emotionally or financially or anything like that. And that was a big piece, that I left what was expected of me and what was safe to go for something that excited me and allowed for the opportunity for growth. And it was while I was on a beach in Greece, eating a fruit plate and looking out at the Mediterranean, so beautiful, and thinking to myself and saying to Teresa, I can't believe that at 22 years old, in my lifetime, I remember when food in the States tasted like this, and it doesn't anymore. I can't believe that we feed our children this. I can't believe that we feed our loved ones and our old people and our, patients in hospitals, the disgusting food that we have in the States that doesn't taste anything like it should or anything like it did when I was a kid. I said, if I were a doctor, I would do something about that. And it was one of those moments where I felt like I got hit by lightning, and I thought, ugh, I have to go back to school? More school? Like I barely got out of Cornell alive. No pun intended, right? So from there, I was like, okay, well, this is it. Like I was excited and I was scared, and I really felt like this was a path that I needed to go on. And Teresa, she taught for Harvard and she taught for Cornell, and she was educated at Cambridge. She taught for the New School. And she wanted me to go to Harvard Med because otherwise no one would ever take me seriously, even though I wanted to do alternative medicine, and she was totally on board with that. I needed to go the conventional route, otherwise no one would believe what I would say. And we went back and forth on that, and I disagreed. I didn't want to spend my time learning something and getting indoctrinated in just a prescription religion to just, go back on it and go to school for what I really wanted to do. I wanted to do it my way. And so I went to naturopathic medical school instead. And while I was there, obviously I was still healing from all of that trauma. So I did trigger point therapies, acupuncture, yoga. Oh, one thing that Teresa did while I was in Florida is she sent me and she paid for me to have acupuncture for the first time in my life, to realign the meridians and to help with it, mostly to realign the meridians, not even with the pain of the leg, but just to make sure that the energy was still flowing along what was disrupted by so much trauma. And so while I was at naturopathic medical school, I did all kinds of other stuff, like rebirthing and homeopathy and color puncture and manipulation, joint manipulation and trigger point therapies, massage and prolotherapy and all of this stuff, because my neck hurt all the time and my low back hurt all the time, and I had a definite imbalance in my hips, and the trauma, I think, and the memory was kept in my left side with a lot of tension in my muscles. But I do have to say that in the year 2000, April of 2000, I hiked Havasupai Falls, a trail in the Grand Canyon, as my comeback tour. So I healed my leg, this is important, 3 times faster than they ever expected, best case scenario. And I did it primarily, I think, because of the nutritional aspects, but also every single night while I was in this hospital bed with no internet, right? I visualized, and I did a Louise Hay meditation about healing your life, and I visualized my leg growing and healing perfectly. And I think that was the crux of it, because I wasn't, when I went back to school, I was drinking and smoking and I was partying, and I still healed beautifully. And now after school, I was in naturopathic school, I was still dealing with so much pain. And I still, I went around the world and, graduated, and I went into practice, and I still had so much pain. And, epigenetically, I don't make connective tissue very well or very strong. So I'm always getting hurt. Like, I fell off a bicycle in Paris and, ripped my clavicle off my sternum. Like, I'm not held together in a very strong way. So any kind of joint this destabilization, or not necessarily flexibility, but when it's not a stable joint, that leads to pain. And so my connective tissue sucks, so I had a lot of pain. But years later, now I'm in California, which I never thought I would be, right, without Alex. But I'm in California, and I'm in so much pain. I'm taking Vicodin and Valium to sleep at night. Not every night, but regularly. Like, I was just amazed in my early 30s. Like, how am I supposed to age like this? And it's not my leg, it's not my shin bone. I had prolotherapy in my knee so I could ski. Awesome. If you have any joint pain, I highly recommend that. I didn't even have the PRP or the stem cells. I did straight prolotherapy. I get a tune-up every now and then, and I was able to ski with ligaments that were largely ruined. And so that was huge. But like the sitting and the stress, the pain was outrageous. And I could have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia and like arthritis and depression, probably, because it was really rough. And I had a hard section of it. And this is where I found the inflammatory piece that comes from foods, which absolutely was another aspect that changed my life. And it's why I run food sensitivities on just about every client that I have. And the epigenetics are another piece that can support people where they're weak, so that they don't necessarily have to exhibit those weaknesses over time, because you've supported them nutritionally and lifestyle over, before they became real problems. And so that really cemented where I am, now. And I guess that's how I got into the practice that I do, in treating the cause rather than just prescribing for symptoms. Because the prescription for the symptoms of what I had were antidepressants and pain medication and muscle relaxants. And I could have been a victim. I could have, been like, oh, poor me. I'm in pain. I'm going to go on disability. I'm going to be sad. I lost a love. I lost a job opportunity, that could never come again. You can't go to the rainforest. The rainforest isn't handicapped accessible when you've got an open, bleeding wound. You don't get on an airplane with that and go study in the Amazon. And that opportunity was gone. And I think it's funny, because now I think it may be coming back around, And it'll be interesting because now it'll come from the perspectives that I currently have as an herbalist and as a functional medicine doctor and as a professional who's done, work with native religions and as an environmentalist. And so I think that opportunity is there that's going to be coming into existence sometime soon. Isn't that exciting? I can't wait. They probably won't have internet there, so we won't be able to podcast, but I'm looking forward to it. And I don't just mean like ayahuasca. I'm talking about, different healing technologies that exist, not only limited to. So, in summary, we all have something with our health show up. Something similar happened to me after I had a really tough birth for my son. I had an emergency C-section. And once again, I feel like some of the trauma emotionally, and that's what the root of this is, because my body feels great. Like, as long as I stay away from my food sensitivities and I move fairly regularly and I sleep and I do those, health hygiene things, I am not, like, I'm sitting here on the floor and I am not in pain. Like, my neck, I am not in pain. And I walk 3 large dogs who are not very well behaved, and I'm not in pain. And yeah, I've had injuries since, but it's not chronic anymore. And I haven't had to detox or go on methadone because the Vicodin stopped working. And you know how all of those opiates, what they've done to a whole, group of people that wanted pain management. And so there are alternatives. And I beg you, when something shows up in your health or your life, look for options. Don't just sweep it under the rug. Don't just suppress it or think about like going the safe route. Fortune favors the bold. And I think that was one of my big lessons, is like, I could have had a very normal, nice life. And I'm not a nice girl. So I guess I didn't get that, nice life. I want a big life. I want a life where, I'm stimulated and I'm excited. And anybody that goes through the detoxification program that I run people through, that really engage in an emotional way and pay attention to their body, emotional things shift. They leave unhealthy relationships. They leave unhealthy jobs. They look at their life and think, I could die tomorrow. What am I going to do? If I knew that I was going to die tomorrow, how would I live my life differently? No one says, oh, I would work that job I hate more and I would save more money for a rainy day. No, they don't. And I think that some of the things that I need to pull up emotionally, I'm going to this great NLP quantum training at the end of this month. And I needed to get this out there because I'm going to be retraining my brain for the next steps. And I don't need to fear anymore that some force is going to come out of nowhere and like rip something that I love from me, or that I'm not going to have control over my life. We don't have control over anything really, except our choices and how we react to things. And so please listen to your body. Look for alternatives. When they say, this is your only choice, you better sign this paperwork because you have to be on this med that's going to probably give you cancer until, the end of time because it's too dangerous to take you off. Maybe you should look for alternatives before you do that. And we have it at naturopathicmd.com. And basically any naturopath worth their salt can help you with that. they're not all created equally, but we can refer you to places that we respect and we know. So thank you for going along on this journey with me. This has been Dr. Heather with the Bad Girl's Guide to Living Well and naturopathicmd.com. You can follow us on Facebook and live your life. Have it be joie de vie and let go of the things that no longer serve you and do it with grace. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Bad Girl's Guide to Living